Every interview is a $10,000 conversation, maybe 20,000, maybe more, because how you show up in that room could change your salary, your stress level, your daily life. And most people are winging it. Let's fix that. Hey, I'm Wendy, and I'm so glad you're here. I coach high achieving professionals to land jobs they love with confidence and clarity. If you're here live, let me know in the comments so I know you're with me. Or you can DM me and let me know. If you're watching the replay, let me know that you're here on replay because I know I have a lot of people who follow these who can't join me live. And I get that. I hear you. I love you. And I'm glad you're here on replay. Okay. So this session is all about the outer game of interviewing. What you say, what you ask, how you lead the conversation from beginning to end, because interviews aren't about being perfect. They're about showing up prepared, powerful, and clear. In fact, I really love alliteration. So let's say they're about showing up prepared, powerful, and present. So let's dive into my 3-part framework. So we're going to start with why interviews are a big deal. And you might be like, no, duh, but I think you're still probably missing a few reasons. Interviews are not just about answering questions. They're about communication, leadership, decision making, and positioning yourself as a peer, not a passive participant. And that shift, it changes everything. Who here has ever walked out of an interview or turned off their Zoom after an interview and said, I wish I had said, or why didn't I ask? We're not doing that anymore. Today is about control, clarity, and confidence. There we go. Alliteration. I want to tell you, I was talking with a client yesterday who has just been getting all the interviews. So in case you think people aren't getting interviews right now, if you're not getting interviews, you need to reach out to me because my people are getting interviews. So this client has been getting interviews and she got asked a question and she answered it, but it was related to a component of the role that she has less confidence in, less experience in. And she's looking for the magic bullet. Wendy, I just was missing part of the right answer. And I just need to find out what that answer is. And I'm doing research and I'm asking ChatGPT. Actually, I think she was just asking ChatGPT and not doing research, but whatever. And I almost fell for it. I almost was like, well, you could do some research to find out how other people would, whether there is a checklist for this process. She wanted a checklist. She thought there was a scorecard, not for the interview, but for this process in her field. And then I realized they're not looking for a checklist or a scorecard. They're not, it's not a fail pass, a pass fail on this interview question if you don't mention the magic scorecard. Quite frankly, most major business decisions don't involve scorecards. Like the whole thing is tough. It wasn't that you missed this magic thing that was the answer. Your job was to convince them that you knew how to collaborate, work with stakeholders, and lead a team to make an informed business decision. That's the correct answer, is that you delivered stories of real experience of how you would do the thing they need you to do so that they can imagine you doing it and feel confident you can do it. That is the answer. What she would like is a scorecard. See the difference? Okay. So we know why the interviews are important. And we're going to focus on getting control, clarity, and confidence. The 3-part interview mastery framework. Are you ready for this? Okay. Prep for their questions. You already know they'll ask things like what I call the world's dumbest interview question and the world's smartest interview question. Are you ready for this? The world's dumbest interview question is, tell me about yourself. Now let me explain to you why that's the world's dumbest question and why you should listen to me. So, I've conducted 12,000 interviews in my career. Let me say the number again, 12,000 interviews. I have done that as a hiring manager, as a hiring executive, and as a consultant and an advisor to venture backed tech startups. I did what's called talent strategy, which is where you sit with some mix of advisors from their primary VC and the leadership team of the startup, and you figure out who you need on the leadership team to get to the next level, how roles need to be adjusted to get to the next level as you scale, and where you're going to invest dollars from the current round of funding and the next round of funding to scale different teams in the company. Part of that process was also like picking application tracking softwares and implementing them, training early career recruiters to do their first recruiting tasks, teaching hiring managers how to conduct interviews. Sometimes I'd meet people who had the classic big egos and they thought they knew everything about interviewing. And I would say, great, you have a lot of interview experience. How many interviews have you conducted? Oh, I've done at least 10. Okay. Well, let's talk about how we're going to do it here. So, tell me about yourself is the dumbest interview question ever, because what usually happens is people will ramble and give you their bio. And as the interviewer, that's not helpful. I want to know things that are relevant to the job that I'm looking to fill. And I want to know, can you do the job? And the best way you can tell me that is by telling me very clear stories about you doing the components of the job successfully somewhere else. When you work with me, I teach you how to craft, tell me about yourself, aimed at the person asking. What do they need to know about you, which is not your bio? Another really dumb question is, what's your biggest strengths and weaknesses? Thankfully, we don't hear that a whole lot anymore. That's really, really, really stupid. My favorite question, and I used to ask this as the first question if the person applied, as opposed to we reached out to them. I would open with, why us? Why do you want to work here? Now, leading with that as the first question is actually really tough, but it actually really tested the person and how they were able to pivot and handle that. I love, tell me about a time when you. Those behavioral questions are amazing. So when you have somebody do that or ask you why us, you know you've got a good interviewer. Maybe they were trained by me. The key here for your answers as the interviewee is stories that stick. Think about past, present, future. What was the challenge? What did you do? What changed because of you? So there's STAR stories: situation, task, action, result. Then there's SAIL, which is like the upgrade of STAR, where you actually talk about lessons learned. Depending on the culture of the company, you might want to throw in a sales story, but stars are just the rock solid way to frame your answers. You do want to practice out loud, and you do not practice out loud in front of humans with vocabulary. Babies, cats, dogs, those are your practice partners. You don't have any of those? A stuffed animal from your children, from your own childhood, a photo of a beloved grandparent, a photo of a happy place. Seriously, you want the happy hormones feeding you when you're practicing so that when you are in the interview, you can get into that space of you, the superhero to your dog. So we have prepped for their questions. Then we have to master our questions. Master your questions, people. This is where you're going to flip the script because the candidates aren't just the best candidates. You want to be one of the best candidates. It's not just answering the questions well. You need to be asking brilliant questions. Power questions involve confidence and strategy. There are different categories. I am a huge fan of making sure your questions are still all about them and never about you. You're not going to ask about culture, first of all, because nobody's self-aware on that subject. So you're going to get ridiculously stupid answers that aren't even grounded in reality. You want to ask open-ended questions. Here are my favorites. And one of my favorites is if the person interviewing you has been there less than 2 years, you ask them why they joined the company and what surprises they found after they joined. If they've been there 5 years or more, you ask them, hey, you've been here for X number of years. Notice you're demonstrating you did your homework and you looked at their LinkedIn profile and you ask them, what makes you stay? Why have you chosen to spend 10 years here? What makes this place special to you? So those are a pair of questions that I really love. Then there's two that actually, so those two actually are how you get culture questions. Why do the people stay? What's good about working here is what that means. Why did you join the company and what surprises did you have? That's warning you about things that people weren't expecting when they took the job and then they got there. So really great questions, but notice it's all about them. It sounds like you're just interested in them. They feel seen and heard. Everybody needs that. Okay. The next category is actually intel gathering for how to make the case of the unique value you bring, but also intel gathering on how stable the company is. And these two questions are, what is the biggest challenge the company is facing if it's a company, a couple hundred people or smaller, or if it's a very big company, you want to talk about like the organization you'd be part of, the sub organization, whether it's a department or a business unit, whatever it is. What is the biggest challenge you're facing as a company, as a department, as a business unit? What is the biggest opportunity? The answers to those questions both can tell you things about how stable the job might be and your likelihood of not getting laid off in the first year, but also allow you to collect intel that you can make a case for how you can help make the most of that opportunity or handle that challenge head on. So those are my favorite questions. We don't ask about culture. We don't ask about work-life balance. We don't ask about anything that's about you. If you really, really, really want to be on a promotion path, you can ask what percentage of leadership roles are filled from within. But definitely don't ask that first because none of your questions can sound like they're about you. They have to sound like they're about them. Step 3, think about the beginning and the end. So if you've ever heard me teach you how to write a resume, I talk about 3 bullets or 5 bullets for your 3 or 5. Yes, I can hold up my numbers. And every job you have, 3 bullets or 5 bullets. If it's 3 bullets, it's the first and third are the ones that are most relevant to the job you're applying to. Not the most impressive that you accomplish, the most relevant to the job you're applying to. If it's 5 bullets, it's the first, second, and fifth are the most relevant to the job you're applying to. So we have a master resume, and then we just flip the order of the bullets to highlight the things most relevant to the job you're applying to. That helps with like team dyslexia and team ADHD and all my neurodivergent people. So they're not rewriting the resume from scratch, but they're still customizing it in the most efficient and effective way possible, because that's how we roll in Wendy's world. So anyway, why do I say first and third if it's 3 bullets and first, second, and fifth if it's 5 bullets? Because when people have less than 30 seconds to look at a resume and decide what to do with it, and believe you me, that's the way that works, they're going to basically process the first bullet out of 3, and then they're going to skim fast and look for the last one. And if it's 5, they're going to read the first 2, and then they're going to skim fast and they're looking for the break to see what the next job was. So that's why the last bullet is seen. So the same thing is true with your interview. How do you begin and how do you end? And if you're a marketer, you know Wendy began the training with a hook, and she's going to end with a call to action, right? Beginning and end. It's the way human brains work. So we want to start strong, and we want to end powerfully. I want to know what your biggest interview questions are. I want you to put them in the comments, whether you're here now or whether you're here on replay, because I'm going to come, I'm going to find them, I'm going to answer them. Because let me tell you, there are not a lot of Wendy's out there for a lot of reasons, but there certainly aren't a lot of people out there who've conducted 12,000 full-length interviews. I'm not talking recruiter screens. I'm talking 12,000 full-length interviews. Now, I want to recap. We talked about prepping for their questions with strong, sticky stories. We know your questions so that you can find out things that sound like it's all about them, but feed you the information you need to win the job and also know whether you want the job. And you know that you want to make sure you lead in the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes. You are ready to rock your interviews. Now, the whole reason we want to rock our interviews isn't so we can play really great music. We want to rock our interviews because we want a job offer. Let's just not be confused about that. But here's the thing. If you want to go deeper, if you've got interviews coming up and you want to feel in control and you're tired of second guessing and ready to lead every conversation, let's talk about working together. I do standalone interview prep sessions. Maybe you want one. If you reach out to me by the end of this holiday weekend, I'm offering a special deal on my interview prep sessions. Now, if interviews aren't your only problem because you actually aren't getting interviews, or if you realize that you're making it to the final round because you're actually good at interviews, but you're actually not interviewing for the right jobs, which is a problem I see people facing all the time. They think they have an interview problem. And if you're making it to the final round consistently, you probably don't have an interview problem. You're interviewing for the wrong jobs problem is your problem. So if that's the case, you can't get the interviews or you keep being the runner up because you're actually not interviewing for the right jobs, we need to talk. If you're even thinking about coaching, we need to talk. But if those two scenarios are true, we need to talk. Let's hop on a free clarity call. No pressure. Just you and me getting clear on your next move. And if I think I can help you, I'll tell you about it. Drop a clarity call in the comments or send me a DM. That's totally fine. And I'll get you the link to book. You've already done the hard work. Now let's make it work for you. Thank you for joining today. If you know someone who needs this training, please drop their link in the comments so they can see this magic and stop bombing their interviews. And all of you who joined today, I can't wait to see where you land next. Let's rock those interviews and land those job offers.